Great. Okay, so today we are going to go through kind of our normal introductions and meeting procedures. Then we're going to give an overview of very high-level phase 3 engagement, homework, next steps, and public comment. And then with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Good to see smiling faces here on Microsoft Teams. Let me kick off with the meeting procedures, and then we will move right into introductions. So welcome to the December 11th, 2025 meeting of Arlington's Transportation Future Advisory Working Group. This meeting is open to the public, and time for public comment will be saved at the end of the meeting. During the main portion of the meeting, conversation is limited to members of the advisory group, as well as staff and consultants who are supporting us. All meeting participants, if you could keep your devices muted until you're called upon by the chair, that's me, that would be great. If you lose internet connectivity during the meeting, don't forget you can reconnect by phone. The Teams chat is active for just two purposes. One, if you need technical assistance, you can go ahead and put your request there in the chat if you're having trouble hearing or speaking or I don't know what. And then it's also there for members of the public to add their names to the public comment list. So if you're interested in making public comment at the end of the meeting and you're not a member of the advisory group, just go ahead and throw your name into the chat at any time. The Teams chat is not there for discussion. If you're planning to provide public comment, you have to do so at the end of the meeting. The chat's not there for that opportunity. All public comments have to be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment time. Advisory working group members, we've been doing this for a good long time now, so just don't forget to raise your virtual hand and then wait for me to call upon you. I don't see anybody connecting via phone, so we don't have to worry about that. And just once again, for our members of the public, if you want to provide feedback and comment, that would be awesome. It will be at the end of the meeting. I'll give you 2 to 3 minutes, depending on how many people would like to speak on tonight's agenda. If you wish to speak, again, just throw your name in the meeting chat. Don't forget this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with the meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act. With that said, let's jump on into introductions. So I'm Chris Slatt. I'm the chair of this working group, former chair of the Transportation Commission. Do we have anybody tonight from Arlington Neighborhoods Advisory Committee? Not seeing anybody. How about Bicycle Advisory Committee?
Mike Hanna, and I'm here.
Welcome, Mike. C2E2, now since we started on time, hopefully is here. Maybe not. All right. Commission on Aging.
Hi, Catalina Calichan.
Welcome, Catalina. Anybody from Disability Advisory Commission? Nope. All right. How about Economic Development Commission?
Hi, Evan Pritchard from EDC.
Good to see you, Evan. Fiscal Affairs Advisory Commission? I don't think so. Forest and Natural Resources Commission.
John Carey from FNRC.
Hey there, John. Love your very on-topic background. How about Neighborhood Complete Streets?
Aaron Schutz with a complete street in my background.
Good to see you, Aaron. Parks and Rec Commission. Nobody tonight? All right. Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Hey, I'm Umber. I'm covering for Pam for the PAC.
Good to see you, Umber. Thanks for filling in. Planning Commission. Looks like not tonight. Transit Advisory Committee. Nope. Transportation Commission. I think I saw Justin.
Yep, Justin Furman here for Transportation Commission.
And do you have a second tonight or just you? Looks like just
I
you.
believe it's just me. Yep.
All righty. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Lots to do tonight. I want to leave lots of time for discussion, so let's go ahead and move along.
Quick intros just for staff.
Oh, right,
sake.
staff.
Everybody knows everybody, but this is recorded. I'm Kristen Calkins with Arlington DES Transportation Division. I'm the project manager for Arlington Transportation Future. I'll have Brian, Allison, and Nate introduce themselves, and then our consultants.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Shelton, active transportation planner and deputy project manager.
Hi, everyone. Allison Bullock, transportation planning manager.
Nate Graham,
public engagement specialist and supporting the team on this process.
And good evening, everyone. My name is David Samba. I am the consultant team project manager.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Adamo. I'm the consultant team deputy project manager.
And now we are excited to share some very high level information about phase 3 engagement, kind of how many people we talked to, how many events we had, all that sort of stuff. Phase 3 engagement was open from October 27th to December 7th. The questionnaire closed at midnight. That accounted for about 42 days of public comment opportunity. During that time, we held 25 events, 2 larger open houses, 3 pop-up events out in the neighborhood. We hosted 5 canvassing events, and then the staff independently ran 15 listening sessions / focused engagements where we went out to the community where we know people are a little bit less likely to just kind of come to us or encounter us at our pop-ups. And we had conversations. We did map exercises. We did the curb lane exercise with lots of different groups of people to kind of hear what people prioritize from their perspective within this phase of engagement. Through all of the different ways we engaged, we had almost 2,500 interactions with almost 24% of those in Spanish. So we had a really good rate of people speaking to us in Spanish from our Spanish speaking community. We had 284 feedback form responses and just under 4,000 web page hits during this phase of engagement. We had a lot of other engagements coming right around us with the comp plan, with Vision Zero, with the performance parking efforts. So people have had a lot of engagement, but we still got a lot of great feedback and conversations through this process. We are only just going to share a little bit of the high-level takeaways from the feedback form since it's been so recent since engagement ended. We haven't done the deep dive. What we really want to hear this meeting is what you guys did with your committees and commissions on the homework. But from the feedback form, when we asked people about the policies and how they felt about them, the majority of people are either neutral to them, relatively satisfied, or very satisfied. So the policies are heading in the right direction. Similarly, from if those policy statements are clear, we had just about over half of the people, actually more than half, with 96 out of 130 people who chose to respond to this portion of the questionnaire thought the policy statements themselves were clear or very clear. So a general good direction as far as the feedback's going on our policies. When we asked people how well they thought the draft transit priority network would connect them to the places they need to travel across the county, of the respondents, the majority thought they would serve their needs well or very well. There were some people who were neutral and some people who didn't think those trips would be served well through the transit network for them. And we asked the same question for the bicycle and micromobility network. 54 people said that they would serve them well, and 26 said it would serve them very well, with about 9 people saying they did not think the network served their needs, and 11 thought that it didn't serve theirs very well. When we look at the feedback responses we got from the curb lane use, categories, and prioritization, one of the things that we were really hoping to hear from the community is the response to our question of, does it make sense for safety and the the mobility priority networks to be our top 2 priorities everywhere? And the majority of people who responded to the feedback form said, yes, that makes sense to us, with the majority of people who responded to the form saying they strongly agree that the modal priority networks and safety, or safety and the modal priority networks in order, are the top 2 priorities for that space when we consider how we allocate it. We asked people to rank the next top 3 priority uses from their perspective in kind of 4 neighborhood types: low density neighborhoods, high density mixed use neighborhoods, garden apartments, and low density to mid density retail areas. Across the board, everybody thought people access was important. So bus stops, Capital Bike Share, the ability to be picked up and dropped off for activities in those areas across neighborhoods were the top response, or third response, if you want to think about a prioritization perspective. When we think about kind of the next level, the 4th priority along the curb lane in the low density and garden apartment neighborhoods, greening, the ability to bring greenery into those areas was a priority. In high density mixed use areas, people thought parking was really important. And in low density retail areas, goods access. And then as kind of the fifth or the third prioritization independently that people made, low density garden apartments and low to medium density retail areas, people prioritize parking, with goods access being important as the third chosen priority in high density mixed use. We're really happy to see kind of people showing us that people access is important as well. And we're going to take the information we've gotten from this feedback form along with the pushing something like 400 forms that we got filled out through our various portions of in-person public engagement for this to see kind of where the community's landing on how we prioritize the curb lane as we start to think about hierarchies that will guide how we make decisions in the future. At a high level, perceptions on the draft policies are relatively positive, with people seeing and stating a desire to see more concrete examples and language in those policies. We get that. That's what our strategies will be developing in the winter are going to do. Those are going to be our actionable and concrete language. Strong support for the draft modal priority networks. People really do think that they're going to serve them better than what we have today. There's not been a lot of negative reaction to those priority networks. And then the framework for the curb lane has been recepted relatively well, and people are supportive of safety and the priority networks being our top focus from a curb lane use if needed in those areas. So strong support too for pedestrians from the mobility perspective being the top priority when we think about how we design our streets for future projects. So that's something that wasn't explicitly asked within the feedback form, but we've been hearing a lot of feedback and comments through engagement that people really appreciate that centering on the pedestrian within the transportation network. So we are just so very appreciative of all of the time and energy that went into phase 3 engagement. But right now we are looking forward to hearing kind of all of the feedback from the committees and commissions and the hard work you did during phase 3 engagement in collecting that for us.
Great. Thanks for the handoff, Kristen. I too am really looking forward to hearing what you all had to say. I went to one of the open houses and stopped by a couple of pop-ups and heard some, I think, recurring themes, and also heard some very different sets of feedback from the public. And I expect we will hear similarly from the various commissions. Kristen was great and sent me all of your homework in advance, and it's been one of those weeks where I did not get a chance to read it yet. So this is going to be my first time hearing what you all have to say. I'm very excited. I will be taking notes, so if you see me looking over this way, that's because that's where my notes are over here. So can we pop to the slide that has the list of commissions for me? So just as a reminder, we want to hear from you about your draft modal priority network feedback, your draft policy feedback, and your draft curb lane use feedback. I'd love if we can stick to probably 5 to 6 minutes per person presenting, and that will make sure that we have some time to talk about it at the end. I don't want to take all of it up with our presentations. I want to make sure we have time to chat. I'll be listening for common themes as well as contradictions, and I hope that you will too. So go ahead and give us all 3 in one presentation, and then we will talk about all of them, but probably one by one at the end. So I know Arlington Neighborhood Advisory Committee was not here and I believe did not submit homework. I'm not seeing Lily from C2E2 yet, but if she does pop on, we're going to jump straight to her next because she is trying to present during a flight layover, which should be fun and exciting if that works out for her. So let's jump to Bicycle Advisory Committee and start with Mike Hanna.
Thanks. I'll try to make this brief. So modal priority network, we generally are supportive of the concept, and a lot of the mapping we think is good. But of course, we're going to be difficult in some ways. We don't completely understand the process yet and how it's actually going to be implemented, and that impacts some of our comments. So what does it mean? What does it mean to be a bike priority 2 or a bike priority 3? What's that going to mean on the ground? And I know that's policy and engineering, but because of that, it's hard for us to comment other than there's no priority 2 to get from east of the Pike to Shirlington. Now there's a priority 3. Is that good enough? We don't know. So there's a big gap in priority 2 in that section. There's no way to get it across 395. So maybe glebe should be a priority 2, but we don't know what. So once again, because we don't know where it's going, it's hard to comment. But other than that, we generally support the process. And then we had a few things like we love 15th Street North and 16th Street North as bike priority, but if you don't fix the crossing at Glebe, they're a death trap. So, do we support those or do we not? We don't know because we don't know what eventually might happen with the crossing at Glebe. So I'll stop there. And then we have a bunch of specifics that I know you guys are going to get into and look at, which is fine. Going to policies, once again, being ornery and difficult. Our biggest concern is that the policies are still really too high level to be policies. They're basically the goals restated in a different way. So we were looking for something a little bit more specific that we could really tie, projects and plans to and say, yeah, that does meet the policy. They're still very sort of aspirational in a way that you can kind of say that everything does or everything doesn't, as opposed to much more specific on the ground policies, project shall do X, Y, or Z. That was the main thing. Now, one of our members actually kind of rewrote them or tried to and recategorize them, and I sent those along to try to make it a little bit more directive. But we still feel like there's a step between policies and strategies that we think there may be a gap in the process where we don't get that much more specific policies that we can hang our hats on. So that was our comment on that without getting any more specific. And once again, on curb lanes, we didn't quite answer the question. We obviously like the idea that the priority network would have a priority at the curb lane. But it's hard to deal with the curb lane in isolation. If we don't know what's going on in the behind the curb, and we don't know a lot of the other factors involved. We identified that pickup drop off is always going to be an issue, and that needs engineering solutions to kind of guide folks to centralized places along blocks for that. I don't think we're ever going to stop people from picking up and dropping off. So saying it's not a priority doesn't really help. We need engineering solutions for things like that. And ways of possibly in some areas look at mixed use in a way that slows everybody down and makes it safer. So that's, and then when we looked specifically at neighborhoods, we couldn't really say a particular neighborhood, there should be a particular priority because, and the example I used in there was, if you look at the Ballston neighborhood, which I think, I forget the categories now, or that's a high density commercial, I guess. Wilson versus Ninth versus Quincy, we're going to have very different answers. So trying to divide it up by neighborhood type didn't make sense to us. We needed to look at individual road uses and the prioritization for those roads. So without getting further into the weeds, I'll stop there and let the next member take over.
Thanks, Mike. If you have it handy, I'd love to drag you into like one weed, which is,
okay.
Could you share like one or two of those attempts at rewriting the policies, just as an example for folks, or do you not have those handy?
Tell you what, go to the next person. I'll bring it up.
Okay,
got it
awesome.
Here, but I don't want to take the time.
Appreciate it. All right, looking, I don't see Lily yet, so let's jump to Commission on Aging. Did we get homework from Commission on Aging?
Yeah. So I think this activity was also a bit challenging for our commission to just provide input on because it still felt just a little bit more ambiguous. The networks and such were hard to kind of conceptualize. But with that, I'll try to summarize. I think in general agree that the networks have the potential to improve the transportation system, but there are obviously still like areas within Arlington that have less coverage than others. And so like one of the pieces that was flagged in our group was access to the Virginia Hospital Center. And some people had very specific comments about, getting from Arlington Mill or Woodland Hills to the Virginia Hospital Center. So just being really mindful about that key destination. Also, yeah, people just made some comments too about difficulty providing input on certain areas for improvement without being able to compare it against like the bus and metro rail like fixed services that exist currently. And still, again, just kind of navigating the maps can be a little bit wonky. And also, I think there's this piece in all of this, so it spans different questions, but just about how like paratransit and like senior loops and social 60 cafe shuttles and different things that older adults use, how that's incorporated, if at all. Obviously, for paratransit and like vans and cars that are taking folks around, that's obviously like a priority, like a car priority or something like that. But anyways, it was just we're trying to figure out where all of that fits within this picture when we think about the programs and the different modes of transportation that older adults use. Trying to read through some of the other comments. As it pertains to the policies, I think similar. Like we agree that the policies seem to be, related to the 6 goals and in general, like makes sense. But I think there was a lack of explicit mention or attention to like affordability and comfort, and accessibility for all ages. And so we wanted to see a little bit more of that into the policy language. Also, there were pieces about reliability and frequency that we were concerned with, especially again around like paratransit and fixed route transit. So just wanting to make sure that those key pieces are also addressed as we think about the future. Oh, and there was also some concern about like the number of policies and like how realistic or like how do we prioritize all of those different things and how important it is along the way to be mindful of just like public communication and outreach all along the way to make sure that people understand what changes are happening. Okay, I'm gonna jump to the other part now. Okay, for the curb lane uses, this one was maybe like one of the harder parts to weigh in on the homework. I think there were continued comments just about the importance of parking and access to parking close to the destination for places that older adults frequent. We didn't see any specific explicit mention of like police, fire, ambulance access. That might have been incorporated in one of the specific uses, but I don't think we saw it in the table. So we were just kind of wanting to raise that flag. And if there were special considerations around specific like senior housing, community centers, and how those will fluctuate across the board. And then yeah, we provided the specifics on where things ranked. I think it was mostly the same because it was a little bit difficult to conceptualize like the different neighborhoods and what that meant. But yeah, that's in the notes, so you can see how we ranked them. But I think those are the summary comments.
Great, thanks so much, Catalina. Looking again for Lily, not yet. So let's jump to Economic Development Commission.
Hello. I do not have as much meaty feedback as the other members of the advisory group have shared. I'll just say I gave this and the folks I heard from my fellow commissioners on EDC gave everything high marks. So basically the questions in the homework that lend themselves to a yes/no question basically were yeses on all of those. We thought these were well thought through, data driven. I don't disagree with some of the concerns about some of this being high level and more details to be vetted out, but I think that's kind of part of the process. I will just say we did provide rankings of all the prioritization by neighborhood context, and I will spare you going through all of these, but I will focus on the high density mixed use neighborhoods that kind of have the closest nexus to economic development issues, and just say we prioritize these with safety being at the top, followed by modal connectivity, followed by goods access, people access, public space activation, greening, and parking last. And this was tough to do because these are all all important things. But overall, very, very high marks. Kudos to Kristen and the whole team for their work on this. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Evan. I especially appreciate the curb space ranking there. That's great. Let's see. If nobody is here from Fiscal Affairs, let's jump to John in FNRC.
Great, thanks, Chris. The FNRC didn't weigh in much on the modal networks except to raise the issue that oftentimes it's perceived that greening and more trees is at odds with bike lanes, and there's a tension between the two. And we believe that shouldn't be the case, and that perception needs to be fought at all cases because they can both be done. When it comes to the draft policies, let me echo what Mike and Catalina said. We all felt that we agreed with all the policies, especially number 17, which was about integrating street trees and green infrastructure. But the words that were used were things like nebulous and vague and restatement of the 6 priority goals. So we're looking forward to seeing these things fleshed out with actual strategies and concrete actions. The biggest concern, the commission was really pretty disappointed that the priorities don't tackle what we saw as our number one issue, not everyone's, but ours, which is less space for cars and more space for people and nature. And I'm hammering home this point with Barcelona behind me, where very controversially, they closed the street, turned it into La Rambla, and it's become the biggest attraction in the entire city, despite the opposition. And the commission just believes there's tremendous opportunities to do something bold like that through Arlington. I mean, the obvious first place would be Shirlington, where you almost have a mini Rambla going on right now that would just explode with street life if the cars were to be removed from that area. So I think that's something that we will continue to push very heavily. It'll sound like a broken record, but that's the number one priority. We also think that that related to that, it would make sense to set as a priority the reduction of vehicle miles traveled, which has so many additional downstream benefits, reducing pollution, improving safety, all sorts of things. So it's setting that as a top priority and working towards strategies that achieve that goal, I think would be huge benefit to Arlington. When it comes to the curb lanes, basically we're in the same theme that I think COVID demonstrated to all of us, especially in the district, of the tremendous vitality that could be brought back to the city by extending the people space out into the curb lane. We saw all the restaurants that moved out and things like that. So you saw all these new uses for the curb lane that fall under this general category of more space for people, less space for cars. And that would include greening. So we suggest to move up the priority of the greening category for the use of the curb lane, sort of combining that with people access. And then to improve the ability for people to travel around by bikes, I think some of the curb lane has to be used not only for the bike share, for bike parking. I mean, you see European cities where you have just, hundreds of yards of bike parking because people come to the bars and restaurants by bikes. We don't have that in Arlington. You get so many places where you can't even find a place to go to the grocery store or Westover or something like that by bike because there's no place to put it. So that kind of fights against the goal of increasing trips, non-car trips. So again, the curb lane has a great potential for more people space, and more greening, and we will be pushing that as we go forward. Thanks very much, Chris.
Great, appreciate it, John. Next up, neighborhood complete streets. Aaron.
All right. First of all, I really appreciate coming right after John. He said some amazing things, and I want to just say ditto for a lot of that. Um, so, neighborhood complete streets. I got some good feedback. There's a lot of agreement, a lot of support for some of these changes, but also some questions, some concerns. So, starting with the modal priority networks. Big concern about buy-in from other areas in the Arlington government. And this came up at our meeting just a couple days ago that, for example, the fire department requires a 20-foot wide clear width on all streets. That's not universal, that's Arlington. And that really limits a lot of things that you can have all the priorities you want or policies you want, and they'll just veto certain things because it doesn't fit that thing. So the less Arlington groups work together, the less anything good is going to happen that's going to actually make changes. So the 2050 update to the comprehensive plan that's going on now has a lot of silos going on, and that's a real concern that there's not a lot of crosstalk, not enough crosstalk. It really still feels like claiming pedestrians as priority one is not really honest because cars win by a landslide every single time. They get the most space, they get the most money, they get the most connectivity, they get the least restrictions. So I think we maybe need to say cars are priority one, pedestrians two, three. I don't know where they are, and then everything below that. To be more honest, as John was saying, if we're willing to close some streets, to really get some vibrancy going on or block off some parking spaces, maybe I'll change my mind. But we don't have a comprehensive sidewalk network. And I think to build a more walkable community where we don't need cars so much requires a bit of prioritization to that user experience, missing links, dangerous intersections and segments, and just not doing it piecemeal. And there's also a question is take Carlin Springs Road, for example, going by the schools there where it's dangerous and there's things going on right now. Arlington County is working on a number of different projects to make it safer for pedestrians. Will what we're doing now, if we started this Carlin Spring thing 5 years from now, will that result in something better than what's going on now? Or is it going to result in the same thing? So are we actually changing how we're going to solve problems with this new system? So that's just a question I don't have an answer to. Maybe you guys do. For the draft policies, it's hard to digest that there's 23 different things in here. So a couple of comments that we got. Safety is absolutely the most important thing. Everybody seems to agree with that. We really would like to see explicit alignment with Vision Zero and safe systems approach, as opposed to just saying, let's be safe. Is there, and I heard, was it Catalina maybe said about hierarchy, prioritization. If there's conflicting goals, like John was mentioning, green space versus bike lanes, trees versus bike lanes, we can't have everything all the time. So how do we prioritize? What's the decision matrix for that? Sometimes it's just financial, sometimes it's actual conflicts. I heard this from a couple of folks that I think Mike Hanna had said that there seems to be a gap between policies and strategies that we need to look at. I think this is what somebody in the bicycle group is looking at, rewriting them to be measurable, evaluatable. For example, policy number 6 says something like maintain a state of good repair for the streets. We could rewrite it as maintain an average system-wide pavement condition index rating for roads and trails above 80. It's a measurable, quantifiable number. It doesn't change the policy except to give it some teeth, maybe. On the climate front, we didn't think there was enough given to climate. There are, 1 or 2 policies in there. making it a green user experience. Biophilic planting doesn't fix the climate. So we're looking at, just a couple of things where it says, hey, let's save the planet. Again, didn't have enough teeth. I think we should specifically align to the county's community energy plan, the CEP, which states a transportation decarbonization goal of 81% by 2050. Federal government, prior to whatever the hell's going on now, had a similar kind of goals for decarbonization, and I think we should really commit to something impactful, not limiting growth, but really reducing things, having some benchmarks along the way. One suggested policy I think is missing is to add clean and clear. I really think maintaining a state of good repair is very different than having debris cleaned off the roads and bike lanes and sidewalks, having snow and ice properly dealt with in a timely manner, all the things that make the pavement and concrete, as perfect as it is, less usable. Tree trimming, all random construction debris that's left behind, all these things. Just it's different than maintenance, and I think it should be added in there explicitly to make everything more usable. Last, curb lanes. Transportation safety is the wrong phrase. It should be safety. There are issues like access to fire hydrants, maintaining curb cuts properly, protecting outdoor diners, handling water runoff from storms. Those are all jobs that the curb and treatments should do. So it's not just about getting people through places, but it's about safety in lots of different things that we ask the curb to do for us. And I think the last issue with curb lane stuff, and this is a challenge that if we're talking about in different neighborhoods, different contexts, how do we deconflict? Setting a list of priorities is great. Hierarchy is great, but if we say bike lanes are a priority, but then allow Amazon trucks to park there, that's just a failure. You can write it down, but we have to actually have a solution to actually make these things happen, whatever we decide. That's it. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Aaron. I just realized, Mike, I never bounced back to you to get those suggested couple examples of those policies.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples, and these still don't go as far probably as I'd like, but just to give you a flavor, goal 7 was create an accessible transportation system for all by eliminating barriers to mobility. A slight rewrite would be consider the barriers to mobility in both the current design and proposed changes to the transportation system, particularly for children. The difference being the second one is a little bit more, you could apply it to a specific decision. When we made this decision, did we consider the barriers to mobility, as opposed to the first, which is still a sort of aspirational, we want to do this at some point. So we made those changes, I would say we're still, even with the changes we've recommended, we're still probably not as far as being really a measurable thing. Like Aaron just mentioned, some really specific, the county has a policy that we will always do X, or we'll always shoot for this particular standard. So a lot of these, like I said, were just kind of rewrites. Another example, ensure the safe mobility and access of people and goods in the right of way, change to prioritize the safe mobility and access of people and transportation. So it's a little bit more pointed direction, as if, it's something staff can hang their hat on a little bit better than just, but like I said, I almost feel like we need another step in here before we get to strategies.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Appreciate you jumping back into that for me. Right. So let's see. Aaron wrapped up. I believe we still have nobody from C2E2, and we're still without anybody from Parks and Rec. So, MBAR, Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Hey, so for the priority networks, I think first wanted to just really thank staff. We sent over many suggestions, a giant wall of text, and there was like a careful consideration and many adjustments based on that feedback. So thank you. I think overall, when it comes to the network, I think one concern that the PAC had was around the overall pedestrian network. What's like, what do we, how do we sort of like move that forward? How do we like we're very supportive of developing the multimodal corridors, but we're concerned about pedestrian network in particular, alternative routes of like cars going through neighborhood streets, cut throughs, that kind of thing. And then it comes to the network, we're sort of still concerned about some of the east-west, north-south corridors. Some of the maps, sort of highlighted some specific sort of key points of interest, but I think schools, healthcare, shopping, that kind of thing, I think there could be more consideration around other types of key destinations. I think there's also feedback around more destination sites on the maps that might be specific for seniors, who might be more dependent on transit. It would help sort of clarify some things which might be lost at the 10,000-foot view on a map, but less so in the kind of very local areas. When it came to the policies, safety was a key aspect. If it doesn't feel safe, if it's not fully accessible for pedestrians, it won't work for pedestrians. We need to have safe and accessible pedestrian networks for all ages, all abilities. So I think like perhaps more emphasis on that. I think there was a specific quote from feedback, is it safe for my 10-year-old walking to school? Is this safe for my neighbor who uses a cane? Is it safe for my 85-year-old father who likes to walk in the neighborhood? Using that as a sort of a test. We suggested 2 more policies that I believe are in the current pedestrian element around completing the walkway network and ensuring that other sidewalk components don't limit the needed sidewalk like width. So things like fire hydrants and lights and things like that. Land use is just sort of a very important general policy. And then when it came to curb use, we suggested a few different potential policy suggestions around emergency vehicle access, access for people with disabilities as an explicit, specific curb use, and then utility maintenance as a separate one, sort of a small distinction. We didn't have a lot of feedback that the group provided around specific usage by the type of like density and use case, but in general more people focused and pedestrian focused. I'd say when it came to curb use, the biggest piece of feedback that we wanted to provide was around ensuring, as I was saying earlier, that the pedestrian priority and the right of way is kept in terms of the width of sidewalks. So, if there's obstructions or trees or other, things like that, that we ensure that additional space comes not from the pedestrian network, but from the curb use and maybe even into the rest of the right of way. We suggested a few different uses for curb space, utility access like streetlights, light poles, that kind of thing. And then we had some questions and sort of just general feedback around, how is staff like consulting with like rideshare, emergency vehicle users, that kind of thing. How are we going to make sure that curb access is accessible for those with disabilities? There's one potential opportunity around open streets for public space activation as an addition. And then around the naming of greening, felt that something around green infrastructure, green space might be easier to understand.
Great. Thank you very much, Embar. I think I saw Tony come in. Can you let us know what
You
Planning
did.
Commission provided as their homework?
Absolutely. Yeah. So with the first piece, let's see here, hold on. Let me get my notes pulled up. So the first piece, we feel that it's created, it's what's here so far is a step in the right direction. But we have some kind of what the other groups have mentioned up to this point. There's some gaps in terms of the operationalizing of these ideas. They still feel a little more aspirational than real in a lot of places. And so I think one aspect that we really keyed in on is the sort of quick build, short term, more immediate relief that we can provide. And I thought that was an interesting point that one of my colleagues brought up because, we have, at least from my understanding up to this point, we have a sort of long-term vision, but we might not have articulated what the flexibility could be to have to pivot and change the direction of the plan to accommodate things. For example, like the scooters. Scooters weren't really a thing 20 years ago, but they certainly have been for the last 10 years. And so what if a new technology was created in the next 15 years or so in terms of micromobility that we would have to pivot around the policy. But anyway, I digress. In terms of the policy supporting the goals, we feel that they do. But again, it's a lot of concerns around the margins, and particularly addressing the moving around the county without a car aspect of it. Obviously, as others have mentioned in meetings past, that has been the goal of other transportation plans. And so the question becomes, how do you make that more real? And I think it was the bike committee that talked about giving these more teeth with alternate write-ups on how these should be achieved. And I would like to see more of those. I think those are interesting. That's an interesting way to go around them. As it comes to curb lanes, we're generally in agreement with a lot of the other commissions, particularly along the point of Pudo. I think just between, like Ubers and Lyfts and Grubhub, all those sorts of things, you have a real active short-term use of the curb space. And I think you need to be pretty clear and intentional about what the policy is going to be there. So that way it can be interpreted properly over the next couple of decades. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Let's see. Did we have anybody from TAC tonight? I feel like no. So go ahead, Justin, for Transportation Commission.
All right. So for the Transportation Commission, we tried to go through some of the questions and answer them individually. So on the subject of does the commission think that this plan is working towards creating a better transportation network? Yes. Draft modal priority network represents a critical step towards building a safer, more connected and sustainable transportation system. We like the clear defining of priority corridors for walking, biking, and transit. We believe that this overall plan will help to reduce the reliance on single occupancy vehicles and improve multimodal integration. We also think that this plan will help to get people where they need to go safely and easily. Prioritize connected routes. The networks will make it easier for residents and visitors to choose these more active and shared modes, which will help to reduce congestion and safety for all road users by reducing single occupancy vehicles. On the subject of the draft policies and whether those support the 6 endorsed goals, we felt that they do. The policies strongly align with the 6 goals. There was particularly a focus on safety, sustainability, and equity as being kind of especially meeting the mark. We really felt like those goals emphasize mode shift, climate resilience, and inclusive access, all of which are essential for Arlington's long-term transportation vision. We think the draft policy should also include some explicit support to ensure that sidewalks, bike lanes, and trails are clear to maintain during routine weather events. This is especially something that we see this time of year, where routine snowfalls and icy conditions can cripple transit, pedestrian, and cycling infrastructure. that failure to adequately maintain those networks during those events pushes more Arlingtonians to have to choose cars and trucks because those become the only reliable transportation options under difficult weather conditions. We know from around the globe and from other jurisdictions that this does not have to be the case. So we'd like to see a move in the direction of focusing on maintaining these places and maybe including that as part of the policies that we're specifically proposing here. We do feel also that by prioritizing people over cars, these policies lay the foundation for a transportation system that's safer, greener, and more efficient. The policies are encouraging of a compact, walkable community with strong connections to where people regularly live and work along various transit options. And so again, something that helps us with reducing emissions and improving overall quality of life throughout the county. On the draft curb lane uses, we felt that overall safety and connectivity are fundamental to an effective curb management strategy. Prioritizing these is ensuring that the curb space is supporting the most vulnerable users and strengthens our multimodal network so that those vulnerable users feel safe in choosing those options. Parents feel safe in allowing their children to walk and bike to school, for instance, and various people doing not just going to work on a regular basis, but a variety of activities feel more comfortable choosing these forms of transportation on a regular basis. On the question of whether there is any curb lane use missing, there was a feeling that the county should consider providing more dedicated space for micromobility devices and freight delivery spaces. This echoes a little bit of what some other folks have mentioned in this meeting, but we'd like to really see, either the use of maybe thinking through hubs for delivery in particular neighborhoods, spaces that are more flexible in models that we have from around the globe of people being able to utilize spaces that are at most times sidewalks, but then at occasional times can also be pickup and drop off locations in areas where those sidewalk is already large enough that it can support that sort of use. And that again, we're helping to balance not having bike lanes blocked, not having traffic lanes blocked whenever these cargo uses are of question. And then in terms of like the prioritization for everything, emphasizing safety is the highest priority for our commission. In many cases, especially in like low density neighborhoods, we'd like to see traffic calming, speed humps, crosswalks, local access for pedestrians and cyclists that's comfortable in all those neighborhoods. Garden apartment neighborhoods, again, emphasizing safety, same sorts of interventions as what I just mentioned. Prioritizing safe access to frequent and reliable transit, bike parking, safe road crossings, in high density and mixed use neighborhoods, focusing on transit priority, loading zones for deliveries, but again, those zones that protect micromobility users and pedestrians. Also providing more space for micromobility parking so that these devices don't get left in areas that are impeding pedestrian flow in these spaces. And then for low and medium density retail centers, balancing the need for short-term parking with accessibility, for space for transit stops and bike racks and loading zones to support the businesses. But again, in all of these, emphasizing and never compromising safety. That's it for our homework.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so I think that's everybody. Are there any committees or commissions that did not get a chance to speak that I may have missed? Don't think so, but I want to check. Awesome, great. So now we've got some time to discuss. If anybody noticed any themes that they want to raise or any contradictions that Steph has to deal with, I wanted to go ahead and, I think there was definitely a theme there about, I think a lot of us in business and that sort of thing are used to, every goal needs a measurement. And this feeling that right now we have both goals and policies that don't feel measurable. Chris and I have pretty strong recollection that there is an expectation that we're going to identify metrics for. I don't remember if it's every goal,
Yes.
every priority, what the plan is. Can you talk through that?
Yeah, and I realized I was nodding my head, but I'm probably not the primary screen on everyone's view shed right now. Yes, so one of the things that we'll be doing, and I know that a lot of things people are bringing up today are things that we think are going to be strategies. We do have another task within this process of developing metrics that we track to monitor the overall goals of the plan. Those will be developed that kind of work towards multiple policies or towards multiple goals. But until we have our policy set, until we have our strategies, having metrics that work towards those is harder to build at the same time, because then you just constantly be trying to like shift downstream and adjust. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we have policies that set our overall high level why and what we want to do so that we can focus on creating those strategies that help us get to the actions and decisions that we need to make to develop a transportation network that achieves the vision and goals. So it's like, I know a lot of people are wanting to see those gritty details, but we have to do this in kind of a step-by-step process, or else the up and downstream edits consistently would just not be tenable for us to manage.
Great. Thanks so much, Kristen. Anybody else want to talk through anything? Have anything that they noticed listening through all of the various pieces of homework? All right, well, I'll echo. One thing I wrote down from Transportation Commission's feedback was this notion of, do we have a policy that makes it clear that like clearing and maintaining our transportation network during routine weather events is a thing? I felt like it was pretty clear that during severe weather events that it was a priority, and that we were we need to deal with temporary disruptions. Kristen, do you feel like the policies that the draft policies were already trying to capture that notion, or no?
I think without articulating every single event that could potentially happen, and when we drafted this originally, it had like 6 or 7 different types of like conditions, and we realized that was a lot. As we develop strategies, those strategies will better articulate the details of what everything looks like, right? That's our weeds.
Great. Yeah, I was just trying to make sure that that sort of strategy has a home in staff's opinion. Great. Anybody else? All right. Well, if we don't have a lot to talk about here, then we're going to have a short meeting.
Well, then I think I'm taking back over sooner than expected.
All right. Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. Well, we just really want to say thank you for everybody for not just this homework assignment, but for all of the homework assignments that have happened over the last 14 months now. You guys have been such an amazing partner in this process so far, and we want to celebrate that just a little bit. So we came up with like a couple of big things that we want to recognize that you guys have bringing consistently your committees and commissions perspectives to these meetings, and then collaborating in a way to make sure that it's moving the totality of what we need from a transportation perspective and for our plan. You guys have shown up at these engagement events. We've had something like 37 pop-ups, open houses, and canvassing events over the last 3 phases, and we've seen you there. We've seen you talking to your neighbors, and we appreciate it. The homework assignments that you did, the work towards just even endorsing the vision and goals over the summer was phenomenal. It was a huge milestone that feels like so long ago, but I think really did make phase 3 engagement so much more tactical and real, because we had an endorsed vision and goals to work towards, that we could say that this is what the board has endorsed and we are going to figure out how we do it. And then this is the 9th meeting. You guys have made it through 9 meetings with us. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate you taking times out of your evenings away from your family or whatever hobby activity or chore that you could be doing right now instead of hanging out with us. We truly appreciate it, because it has made our planning process better and stronger. The homework assignments that you have given us, we use, we read, we reflect on, and we integrate them into the next phase. So with that, I do want to announce that there is no homework till the next advisory group meeting. The holidays are yours to enjoy, so please enjoy them. We will be back in the new year, and I'm going to talk through a moment or two of next steps, because a lot of what we heard today are things that we recognize, that we know that there are more details that this plan needs, more kind of how-tos of the plan. And we are excited about those. But the first thing that we're going to do in winter of 2026 is come back and talk about how we have refined the policies that we presented during phase 3 engagement that we just heard your homework review on, the networks too. Give a little bit of an overview of the deeper feedback we heard from phase 3, how we used it, how we refined our policies and networks based off of that community feedback. And we'll be sharing those in early winter, likely February, the first week of February. Your homework from that meeting will likely be to make sure that the refined policies seem reflective of the totality of community feedback. We're really transitioning to making sure that our plan as a whole is working towards creating that better transportation network. Midwinter, still in winter, mid-March, we plan on bringing those strategies to you. So this next meeting that we're coming to, we still won't have the strategies ready because the strategies need to be developed off of those refined policies. So in mid-March, we will be bringing those strategies. We're going to talk about them. We're going to share them. The homework from that meeting will likely be to talk to your committees and commissions about the strategies. Those are the next 2 touch points with the advisory group we have tentatively scheduled out, but that is not the bulk work of all of the plan work that will happen next year. During all of this time, we'll be working on typologies. We'll be working on refining the curb hierarchies and sharing those with you as well at a certain point. We will then be taking everything, the policies, the strategies, the roadway networks, the modal networks, and creating a transportation plan that we will be bringing and sharing with the community for feedback on its totality sometime in the late spring to early summer so that people can read the package as a whole and let us know what they think. We're still shooting for a board endorsement sometime in fall 2026. It's a lot of work. You guys are going to have a lot of work to do with us, but we think we can do it. We've been successful thus far. And this is just that normal kind of slide of where we are. We're wrapping up the fall policy development in 2025. This is our last meeting of this year. We've had a full year on this plan. All of 2025 has been Arlington's transportation future in coordination with you guys. So we just want to say thank you for that. And then Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you for public comment, but I do not believe we have anybody from the public in our meeting.
I think that is correct. I believe I recognize every name in the list as either staff consultants or members of the working group. So if I'm wrong, please chime in right now that you're a member of the public and you'd like to do comment. But I don't think that's the case. In which case, I just want to echo a lot of what Kristen said, and thank you all for your hard work. I hope you found this meeting valuable. I know there is a part of my brain that was like, oh, is it just another meeting where we all report out, in a meeting that could have been, a really, 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 really long email. But I do think it is really important that we do hear from each other. It's very easy in these processes to put your own feedback in and then be like, well, why didn't staff take everything that I said and put it into this plan? And the answer to that is they got very different feedback from a whole bunch of other people. And so I think it is important that we all hear what staff is hearing from the various different commissions, and where there are similarities and common themes and where there aren't. So thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for your hard work. I was delighted to see many of you at pop-ups during phase 3 engagement. I took, I think, the greatest joy of all time in reading all of your mobility network feedback from the previous, and then all of staff's comments about the ones that they directly incorporated right into the draft networks, and then the reasoning for the ones that they did not. I hope you read those responses as well. I thought they were extremely well done, and it is really great to see staff taking the time to give that kind of feedback to us because we took the time to give that kind of feedback to them. So it's not something I see nearly as often as I would like, and I like to point it out and applaud it when I do. So with that said, I don't see any other members of the public jumping in, and so I will look forward to seeing you all in February sometime. And as soon as we have narrowed down onto actual dates for meetings, you will see them in your email. In the meantime, don't forget, I'm always here for you. If you have any questions, concerns about the process, you want to talk through anything over the holidays, anytime that I'm in the country, I'm happy to get together and chat. Yeah, I'll see y'all in February.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, guys. Bye-bye.